2, 1, go ahead and start. So for coming today to our C&I committee meeting on April 20th of 2021. We're glad for everyone who's able to join us here on our call and also for anyone who has joined us via live stream. I'm going to turn the agenda over to our chairperson, Susan Condio Hernandez, who is going to read oral communication for us.
Okay, good evening. I have several items here to read in regard to oral communication. The first one is Justin. Hello, I'm an FUSD educator, and I would like to read this excerpt from the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum recently passed by the CDE. Quote, students need to see themselves represented as empowered individuals and experience a diverse range of complex stories to help them understand themselves and the lived experiences of others different from them. Studies have shown that large majorities of books published for children and young adults feature white characters. When characters of color and other marginalized groups such as LGBTQ plus do appear, they often are portrayed as stereotypes or exist at the fringes of the story, end of quote. I do not think this information is news to anyone, and I would hope that now that the state has approved this wording, that our own local C&I committee can begin to make concrete changes towards diversifying our curriculum. And the next comment is anonymous, and it's the same one as that I read before, so I'm not going to read it again. It's the same exact quote. Hold on one second. Give me a minute because my computer's acting up on me. This is an anonymous comment. As a teacher, I was interested to find this quote from the Ethnic Studies Model from the CDC. Oh no, that's the same one. 3 of them are the same. An anonymous oral communication.
Susan, I'm sorry, may I stop you? I think that one's a little bit different. The quote's the same, but the paragraph after.
You're right. I'm sorry. Yes, I correct. I'm sorry. This is an anonymous one. As a teacher, I was interested to find this quote from the Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum from the CDC. Quote, by choosing texts that provide protagonists and heroes in multiple cultural contexts, and by centering the voices that have been traditionally marginalized or excluded from the curriculum, and applying a critical lens to text, teachers provide opportunities to develop students' critical literacy thinking skills. While also allowing them to see themselves in literature, they read and expand the range of stories that they have about others in the world, end of quote. I would like to see more diverse novels added to the district's core novel selection. As it stands, these core novels are still majority white when our own student body is majority POC. Please add books to that list that speak to our own student body's experiences. The next one is an anonymous comment. We deserve to see ourselves in our spaces of education. We should see stories like ours represented beyond that of tragedy and exorcism. Students need the adults in the room to actually advocate for the change we are demanding. And Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term, quote unquote, intersectionality, end of quote, to help contextualize how power affects different aspects of our identities. As a student, an Asian American, someone who identifies as female, all of my identities determine how I experience the world. I deserve to know my history and be represented in the stories. I need to study, and I'm asking you to push forward and diversify the core novels with the expediency in which it is needed. Racism is systemic, and education is but one of the pillars that upholds the systems of oppression that affect FUSD students. This committee has the power to change things for the better. Hold on one second. I lost my thing here. This comment is from Jenny Applegren. Thank you to all the members of this committee for all of your hard work. I am concerned at the time committed to discussing the equity policy and the lack of attention given to the deep-rooted inequities within our district. While I understand the importance of policy, I look forward to the committee moving forward to take action to make real change by looking at disproportionate discipline data, diversifying curriculum, and how to hire and retain diverse teachers, leadership, and staff. Thank you. The next comment is from Isha Potharaju, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name. As the purpose of this committee is to advance equity within FUSD, it is imperative to acknowledge the severe lack of diversity in the school curriculum. Why aren't students learning about their own history in a district that consists of 90% students of color? In my own readings and history classes, I have only ever read about the suffering of people of color over our achievements, culture, and excellence. It is not realistic to portray Western cultures as the birth of modern civilization. Most European inventions were built off of the knowledge gained through trade from non-white cultures. Diversifying curriculum is an issue that the committee needs to take action on immediately. The next one is an anonymous comment. Thank you for establishing the Antiracism Subcommittee. I want to write in to remind the body that there is a key difference between anti-racism and not being racist. This analogy works for fighting all oppressions and inequities. The former requires action, the latter is a passive process. Advancing anti-racism requires action. Although some may think that the work of the C&I Advisory Committee does not hold as much weight as other spaces when it comes to fighting oppression, I would argue that your work is some of the most influential and powerful that can be done. This committee can provide students, educators, administrators, and the wider community pathways to learning about a full and all-encompassing truth. Thank you for your work so far, and I urge you to push forward in the effort diversifying the curriculum. The next comment is an anonymous one. As an educator, I did not learn about the FAIR Act until a CTA conference in 2018. The FAIR Act went into effect in 2012 and dictates that history textbooks need to be inclusive of LGBTQ+ figures in history. Currently, I cannot think of very many LGBT figures, and if any that are listed in my history textbook, leaving it up to me to fill in the gaps that are missing. The state of our current textbooks do not meet the FAIR Act, and that is problematic not just from a legal standpoint, but from a moral standpoint for our LGBTQ students. I recognize that our district currently has a history social science group dedicated to incorporating these ideas, but this same sense of urgency needs to also be applied to English in the push for core novels that speak to the diverse identity amongst our student body. Thank you. As a Hispanic student, it is not often that I get to see my history and culture reflected in books I read for my English classes. Off the top of my head, the only major book I can think of by a Hispanic author is Bless Me, Última. And while it was a great book, I would like to see more of that representation in books I read so that I can relate to it better. All too often, I have read and will mostly likely continue to read books by white authors. And the more diversity I read, the better I feel I would be learning. Please consider adding more diverse core novels to our list and encourage teachers to teach those diverse novels. Thank you. This is another anonymous comment. A student at Fremont, I have peers of many identities, yet none of our curriculum mentions any LGBTQ figures when we come across people such as Alan Turing. The persecution that they faced for their identities are never mentioned. All students deserve to see themselves reflected in the curriculum. Our textbooks are outdated for not having any mention of varying orientations and identities. We need to break down the stigmas in our education. It is essential for the equity community to address this issue of underrepresentation. And then the last one. Hello. Another anonymous, hold on one second. Another anonymous comment. Hello, I recently came upon NYU's culturally responsive curriculum scorecard. Out of curiosity, I used FUSD's 7th grade English curriculum as a sample. My finds are that FUSD's representation and teacher materials are culturally destructive, and its social justice orientation is characterized as culturally insufficient. This is quite alarming as a parent of students of color in this district, as I have come to learn what my children study impact their understanding of the world. I beg you to help this district progress and to show a wider range of narrative when it comes to what our students experience. We must actively fight against the norms that have led to a place where 90% of our students do not see themselves in their own learning. And that's the end of public comment.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. Okay, go ahead. Did you want to say
please.
something?
Would you like me to display the PowerPoint as you work your way through it?
Please. Thank you so much. Oh,
can you see
yeah,
that?
Perfect. Thank you. All of you should have received the agenda in advance. And what I would like to do is look at the minutes from the meeting on March 16th. Could you go to the next slide, Kim? And I know that all of you have had a chance to read them beforehand. And are there any corrections that need to be made before we make a motion to approve? Oh, it just left. I don't see the PowerPoint on there.
I don't know that you need it, and I thought it might help to be able to see everybody's faces for a vote, or if you have hands raised or anything.
Are there any corrections? Then would somebody like to make a motion to approve as corrected if needed?
Or did someone want to just, if there's no objection, then we can go ahead and approve it as is? If you want to, if there's any objection for that instead?
You're a quiet group today.
And when they're quiet, Susan, there's no objection. And we have now approved the minutes as is.
All right. Thank you. All right. Our next item on the agenda is the Equity Committee update. And Stacy is our representative from that committee, and she's going to give us an update of the last meeting.
Hi, everyone. We had our second meeting last month, and our third meeting will be following this meeting today. But really, just to give you guys an update, we spent our whole meeting last month looking at board policy 01415 to do with our philosophies and goals on equity. And I know the committee made some changes, and we were going to continue making changes tonight, as well as get a presentation on, sorry, too many minutes, an overview of discussion of student data. So that's the focus of tonight's meeting, is looking at student data and finishing our recommendations on board policy 01415, and hopefully this will then go to the school board for their reading of it. And when I hear more about where we are in terms of the board approving it, I will let you guys know. If there's any things you would like me to bring up, please let me know. That's all my report for today.
Thank you, Stacy. Our next item on our agenda is the Antiracism Subcommittee update, and I believe Victoria is going to give that for us, please.
Thank you so much, Susan. So I just included in the chat the notes from our subcommittee meeting, and then those could also get linked into the minutes as well. So then we can, then everyone who reviews will also have access. And so I just wanted to thank people that participated. We had 100% subcommittee attendance, and we had our facilitator, Kim, and chair, Susan, both be able to attend. So it was a really great group. And So just to quickly highlight, we started with some general type of discussion after going over our scope and what we think looking at an anti-racist classroom would be, and kind of brainstormed, in addition to having linked in the original agenda the committee feedback that you have already done. Part of this will be not redoing what the committee has done, the greater committee of C&I, but spending more time and going more in depth and coming up with some stuff that we can use and bring back to you. We got more updated information too on the curriculum diversification, which I know it sounds like a lot of people are interested in, which is great. So Kim has done a great job of continuing to provide those updates and that feedback. So we got even more, and we want to just make sure the community as well gets to keep hearing about the work that we're doing there. And then we talked about after something that really stood out is, in order to guide our work, developing a common understanding of what anti-racism in our curriculum and instruction. So that was identified as kind of the primary work product we would like to bring back for you in May. And that hopefully can springboard further work in anti-racism next year. But the committee had a lot of discussion on multiple agenda items, that if we have a common reference point for developing that understanding and bringing back a presentation to this committee about what that looks like, then it would be able to guide our work. And then, for example, when we talked about things like professional development or other things that FUSD can do, if we have that touch point of what that common definition and understanding is, then we can reference that. And so Kim had offered, for example, some of the things that the C&I department is offering for professional development. And then we would actually be able to better hone in on the type of things we think we want to do to supplement, rather than reinventing the wheel. So that was a large portion of the agenda. And then we moved on from there to form what we think we will do in the future for an agenda. And so, as I mentioned, the presentation on what anti-racist curriculum instruction looks like would be something that we would want to do. And then a few other items came up. The ethnic studies was the other primary one that we think we might be able to, because it's already been a topic this year. We might be able to bring back a recommendation for you in May. And then we had a couple other items that came up as well. Things that could supplement or go hand in hand with the work that we're doing in C&I, and the new development, the new incorporation of anti-racist curriculum and diverse curriculums, perhaps doing student focus groups, and just being in touch really with student groups and what that looks like, and also perhaps some lesson development or some supplementary materials that can be of assistance for educators who are making strides to diversify their curriculum, but might not have, they just might want some more support or scaffolding. And we might be able to have some educator experts already in FUSD that could potentially do that work. So those were the few things that we're looking at. And yes, baby, can you wait 1 second, sweetheart? So we would then, we're going to meet at least once, if not twice, before the May meeting to develop and come back with those items. And we'll ask for a little bit of grace. The original presentation, which we approved the subcommittee on, said that we would kind of be wrapping up by May, but we did start a couple months late. And so our committee members are year-round appointees, but I believe, Kim, our last meeting is in May, just as part of our regular calendar year. But we are committee members until we start up again in September. So if there isn't objection in May, we would just let you know kind of where we are. And if there's work that we still wanted to do with guidance, then we would do that. Otherwise, if we think that there are just things we would pick up in the fall, that's all under the direction of this greater committee. So now would be the time, given those agenda items, that we would be looking at a presentation on anti-racist curriculum and instruction, a recommendation on ethnic studies, and then potentially looking into the student groups or some development of supplemental materials to the diversification. It would be the time for this committee to redirect us or to add or delete items that you don't think are either priorities or are not appropriate, or if you wanted to put something that you really had wanted to see the anti-racist C&I committee work on, then this would be that time as well.
Thank you, Victoria. Wow, that's a lot of information. Kim, would you like to do your presentation on the C&I update?
I'm so sorry.
Sure.
So I just wanted to was there anything, because now would be the time in order to comment or to redirect. Just wanted to make sure I was clear on that, because I was doing fast talking. I know we have a fabulously packed agenda today, so I didn't want people to miss the opportunity, like, oh, I didn't even register that she was telling us we could, express thoughts on that. So just for the committee, if there was anything that wasn't mentioned or you don't see in that agenda, but also with the approval of the chair, Susan, if something comes up at the end of the meeting when we normally look forward to our future meeting, if something comes up that you're like, oh, actually, that might fit better for the subcommittee, then that could be an appropriate time too, if you're agreeable.
That's fine.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much.
We can also use that. So if somebody has an idea that comes to their mind as we're moving through this meeting, go ahead and put it in the chat, for Victoria.
Thank you. I like your background, by the way. All right, Kim, would you like to give the C&I department update?
Sure, I'd be glad.
We're actually ahead of schedule today.
We're moving along.
Yeah, I have a comment. I see this
Sure.
report. It has a lot of detail here, right? So I want to commend the subcommittee to come up with such a comprehensive report. I suppose people can read it and digest it, and we may have more questions as we go along. But this is pretty comprehensive here. Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then I'm going to share my screen again. Actually, yeah, I guess I will. Actually, I might just do. So you can see that screen, right? All right. So just as I do each month, I would like to catch you up on some of the highlights of some of the things that we're working on in the C&I department. And one project that we're very excited about, and the thanks for this really, I think, starts with Mr. Cruz, who is not with us today. I don't think I see him. But anyway, he after I did my update last month, he said, gosh, it'd be great if this information was available to the public. And so we took that suggestion and combined it with the dashboard format that the district has been using to track, how our return to school and such as that. And so did what I'm showing you now switch to the dashboard?
Yes, it did.
It did. Okay. Excellent. So what we've added on the public facing side of the website is a C&I initiatives dashboard. And you can see in the leftmost column, it divides whether something is around curriculum, which would be the materials that we give teachers to teach with, or whether it's around instruction, which is more about the process of the actual teaching. And these are initiatives, most of which you're pretty familiar with, I think, anyway. We're able to adopt a science program for grades 6 through 8. So the status for that shows up as complete. We are in the process and very close to hopefully having adopted a social studies curriculum for our grades K through 5. That'll go to the board on the 5th of May. As you know, we're in the middle of our core literature adoption, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. We're in the pre-planning stages of taking a look at a social and emotional learning curriculum. You are aware that we are updating our supplemental reading list. It was mentioned in the comment today about the History and Social Studies Instructional Practice Work Group that's taking place. And then we also have significant going on among our chemistry teachers to pull together instructional materials to help make that process more consistent across the different schools in the district. So my first update to share with you just is that we're really excited about that dashboard. And if you're ever interested to see what's going on in C&I, you're always welcome to go check there. It's on the public facing page. You just go into departments and search for C&I and you'll find it there. I know that, yeah, Victoria, go ahead.
I just want to say that I absolutely love this. Thank you so much. It's so cool to see all of the things that the district is developing. And I think what would be great, because we're getting, I know that a lot of our goal is diversification, updating. If there's any sort of modifier that you may be able to use, because I saw in there you had the social studies and you had core curriculum and you had supplemental, and a key goal, and it might not, you know, maybe whether it's the primary goal or, you know, just one of the goals of doing that is diversification. It is full representation. And so if we could include any of those adjectives on the dashboard, I think people would then see the kind of work that that we're really doing in this area. And thank you so much for getting that out there.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. Thank you. We will take a look at the wording and make sure that it's clear that a key reason we're doing this is because we do recognize the importance of diversifying that curriculum. So thank you very much for making that suggestion. I appreciate it. Anything else that's exciting? You remember we had our presentation about ethnic studies. The History Social Studies work group is actually working with a county-wide group of history teachers now, and they are, I think maybe even it was this afternoon or maybe yesterday afternoon, they are also hearing a presentation on ethnic studies. So this is exciting because it's something that's really gaining momentum in a lot of different places in the district, and I thought because you had seen the presentation, you'd be interested to know about that. Something else that's going on, if you happen to follow this at all, there was some concern over some of stereotypic pictures, cartoons in a few of Dr. Seuss's books. And so we are addressing that as a district, talking about what we want to do. It's a delicate balance between making sure that we aren't exposing our students to depiction of stereotypic depictions that might lead them to misunderstand groups of people, and also balancing just not wanting to be censoring. So we're working on what our approach is going to be for that. Board policy for the supplemental adoption went to the board for its first reading. The board members made a couple suggestions about what they might like to see, some small changes in that. And so I am interested in running that policy by anybody from this committee who would like to take a look at it with me. I imagine it would be one meeting. It probably would be about an hour. If it's something you're interested in helping me review and think about, why don't you drop your name into the chat? And I'm going to ask maybe Jamie and Sue, would you guys kind of watch the chat for me just so I don't miss names that go by? If there's anybody who'd like to be part of making the changes, the revised policy will then go back to the board. We held a meeting right after spring break. I think we held it on the 12th of April, so last week, another supplemental adoption meeting, and we approved 5 more supplemental novels that are now available for our teachers. Again, a wide variety, diverse authors, diverse topics, diverse genres, and this is in addition to the 7 that we had already approved earlier this year. So I'm very excited that our educators now have access to 12 more diverse novels that they may use as they're working with students this year, and of course, as we're moving forward. Literature adoption continues to move forward, and as I'm sure you can imagine, adopting core required literature is it's a lengthy process, because while each individual person has an opinion about what books they feel should be on the core, we've brought together a very diverse team representing all our secondary schools in the district, and we're putting our heads together to come up with a set of novels that is really diverse and representative. We have gone ahead and created our vision statement. The piece that's in highlighting is still under discussion, but this is our vision statement. And I'm hoping as you glance through that you will say to yourself, gosh, a lot of what we suggested as the C&I Advisory Committee, a lot of the words that were important to the committee are the same words that have ended up in that vision statement. What we're doing now that we have this, or this is close, it's our draft, what we're doing now is taking key elements out of the vision statement, and we are using those to build a rubric. And then that rubric will be the method that we use to judge which books are most appropriate to be included. So for instance, where it says a variety of genres, well, one of the things we want to make sure is as we're picking books, we're picking them across a variety of genres. So that goes into our rubric. A little further down, you can see there are the words relatable, engaging, foster empathy. Those are all the kinds of things that we're building into this rubric that's helping us decide which books are going to be appropriate to be these really foundational core novels. What I wanted to share with you about kind of just the highlights. Of course, we've got a lot going on with finishing this school year and summer school and what's next school year going to look like, and all sorts of things going on, but just a few highlights for you from the C&I department, and I'd be glad to entertain any questions. All right, well, if something occurs to you later and you want to email me or contact me, that would be great. I hand it back to you.
Okay, Kim, in the presentation, do you want to do the first 3 slides up until the part that I will be doing? Is that okay?
Yep, that's kind of what we agreed on, isn't it? Don't worry, I'm on it.
And you know what? We're actually ahead of schedule by 20 minutes.
All right,
Wow.
well, that's perfect, because I was hoping that we might have some time for discussion at the end. Okay. And I know you've got a lot of information in your presentation. So. Okay, so you probably remember as we came out of last month's meeting, we acknowledged that we wanted to talk about assessments. And the concept, the topic of assessment is really broad. We also knew that interventions was important to us, and that interventions and assessments really work hand in hand. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to start off our presentation and do a little bit of an introduction to assessments broadly, and just kind of help you get a context for the kinds of assessments we use with students, the purposes they serve, and how that connects to intervention. Then what I'm going to do is turn it over to Susan, who's going to go from the 40,000 foot level where I am very deeply down, and she's going to share information about a specific assessment tool that we use in our district called iReady. She has actual student data, and she's going to show you that data, and then she's going to talk to you about how that connects to the kinds, how it helps teachers make the decisions about what they're going to do next with students. So hopefully the big picture and then the really detailed picture is going to give you at least a taste of assessments. Share my screen one more time. All right, so let's talk about assessments and how they relate to interventions. So stepping back a little bit, we've got to remember, what's the goal of learning? Our big picture goal for students is that they learn the California state standards. Those are the guidelines for what we teach at every grade level. And I don't know how many of you have seen California state standards before. They're built on the Common Core state standards, but they are tailored to California. So I put a couple standards in here just to help you kind of get started understanding this. So for example, In first grade, one of the standards has to do with decoding and word recognition. It's standard 1.10 or 1.10. All the standards follow a basic pattern, and you can see that I've highlighted here the words that are the verbs. So a standard will give us a verb, and then it will describe what it is that the student needs to be able to do around that verb. So in this case, a first grade student needs to be able to generate, that's our verb, all the sounds and letters and letter patterns, including consonant blends and long and short vowel patterns, such as phonograms, and then you'll see there's another verb here, and blend those sounds into recognizable words. Standard, while it is around one concept, it's actually two different skills. Students have to be able to generate the sounds, and then they also have to be able to blend those sounds into recognizable words. And these very concrete actions that we want students to be able to take are the very kinds of things that we want to be assessing to determine how students are doing toward their mastery of a standard. I also included in here an 8th grade reading standard, so you could see it's also reading, vocabulary, and concept development. You can see that it also has 2 verbs in it. You can also get a sense for how the complexity of the standards increases as the grade level increases. So for example, this one wants students to show us that they know how to analyze idioms, analogies, metaphors, and similes. And then from that, we want them to be able to infer what the literal and figurative meanings of those phrases would be. So as we're doing assessments, we want to assess, can they analyze? And then from that analysis, can they infer the meanings? So this just kind of gives you a sense for what assessment really should be doing. In a year in a school district, we give a wide range of assessments. It's kind of easy to think about assessments and think, oh, it's just the test at the end of a chapter. And part of that is true. But there are all sorts of different kinds of assessments we do, and they range, if you look at the clouds at the top, they range from being assessments for learning, meaning these are assessments whose results we're going to use for teachers to determine where to go next. These are done in the process of learning, with time left for students to continue to learn the things that they haven't mastered yet. The chart, you have assessments that are more what we call of learning. So these are what we call summative assessments. They happen at the end of a year, or maybe at the end of a time period, or at the end of a unit or chapter. And they aren't so much used to drive future instruction, but they're more used to analyze what a student mastered and didn't master. Each of the different kinds of assessments, and then there are basically 5 categories of assessments. There are formative assessments, common formative assessments, there are unit or chapter assessments, there are some assessments that are required by the district, and then there are some assessments that are required by the state or the federal government. So just to give you a couple examples, let's start over with the formative assessment. So a formative assessment is an assessment that a teacher might use after they've taught a lesson. It would be a very quick way of figuring out which students have mastered what they taught and which students still need a little bit of work on it. So an example of that might be that a teacher would ask a student to write the answer to one math problem, or they might ask them to write one sentence about something they learned, and we call that an exit ticket. After the students do that, the teacher takes those, they go through those, and from that, they know very specifically what it is that needs to be addressed the next time they come together to work on that standard. And the feedback is, it's immediate, it's direct, and it's very directly connected to intervention, because a teacher can tell from looking at the exit tickets what intervention still needs to happen. Moving toward the right, another kind of assessment is called a common formative assessment. And commonly, this is done, say, among teachers at a grade level at a school. So they all agree, when we get to a certain point in our teaching, we're all going to give some sort of an assessment. These tend to be a little bit longer. An example might be if you did a 3-question quiz on something that you had been working on maybe that week, and it would assess mastery of maybe multiple skills, but a small number of skills, 2 or 3 skills, as opposed to 5 or 10 standards at the same time. And again, the connection to intervention is quick and it's direct, because based on how students do on that, then we know where teachers are going to go next. Moving further to the right, we have our unit or chapter kind of traditional tests that we think about. They tend to happen, you're going to teach a unit on fractions, and then you're going to give the test on fractions, or you're going to teach a unit on Romeo and Juliet, and then you're going to give a test on Romeo and Juliet. Tests assess a larger number of skills, and whether it can be connected to intervention or not really depends on what the teacher does with it. If the teacher considers that that is the last opportunity for a student to show mastery, then there's really no need to go back and do intervention, because there wouldn't, you consider it the final word. If a teacher considers that a unit or chapter test is still an indication of which students captured the information and which ones didn't, then there might very well be a direct connection back to intervention that's done. Continuing to move on, periodically during the year, our district requires benchmarks. An example of that would be the spring district assessments that we're either doing or getting ready to do. Everybody across the whole district, either in a grade level or say taking the same class, takes the exact same test. Connected to intervention depends a little bit on how a teacher uses that data, but it also gives us district-wide data that we can use to assess progress of all of our students, and we can also begin to look at the effectiveness of our curriculum, because it's a look at all the students in the district. And then the final tests that we often take at the end of the year, an AP test might be an example of this, CASP testing is an example of this, and it's an end of the year look at the mastery of all the skills a student should have learned during the year. And because of when it happens, and because of just the very summative nature of it, there's really no connection between that and intervention. We don't come back the next year and look at a student's CASP results necessarily and begin to do intervention on that. In showing you this chart is just to plant this idea in your mind that there's a wide range of assessments, and how teachers use them varies. And because that varies, the impact that it has on student learning varies. The last thing I want to do is just take you back to our MTSS pyramid that we talked about, that tier 1, where the core classroom instruction happens in tier 1.
Can I interrupt quickly? Can we go back to the previous slide? So that is this table something that is a district on the previous slide? Is this something that is our district's view of this, or is this more of a standardized view of what the assessment means and what intervention are possible?
Yeah, great question. It's very much a standard look at assessment. Certainly it's part of how our district thinks about assessments, but you can go to professional development anywhere in the forum of education, and you can see this same kind of a chart. They're not exactly all the same, but the basic idea is universal among educators.
Sure. And here intervention means how we are impacting the student that was assessed. But if I were to take that one level higher, some of the intervention can be in the form of, if we are seeing trends, then how do we come back and do, let's say, a district level or school level, site level introspection of how effective are we at our instruction, and do intervention at a higher level above this students as well. So is that something
Yes.
that is looked at somewhere, or?
It is many schools, and I would like to say all, it's pretty close to all, and I could defer to our principals on this, but many schools have teams, data analysis teams. They might be called an instructional leadership team, but teams that look at their data across the school and can draw conclusions across the school. And certainly at the district level, we take a look at the district tests and make decisions at a district level as well.
Right. So that's it. So then the bottom right cell of that table, maybe we should, instead of saying there's no, I don't remember what it says, but instead of saying that it is not impactful, I mean, it is actually impactful at the macro level, right? The district and the state and federal assessments help us improve as a district so that the next set of students get better education here.
Yes, I agree with you absolutely. And maybe the fault here is in my definition. When I think of intervention, I think of that relating to a particular student as opposed to programmatic shifts. But you're absolutely right. Those big picture looks lead us to programmatic shifts as opposed to specific support for an individual student around an individual standard.
Yes, understood. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Susan, I'm not able to see if there are other hands raised or other questions. Is there anything else I should address before I go on?
I don't see any other hands raised, but I don't have the entire screen, to be honest with you. I saw Ms. Trustee Prasad's.
Okay, well, I'm going to assume.
Go ahead and
all right.
proceed.
Yeah, perfect. So we've seen this tier, we've seen this pyramid before. Just a couple big ideas. Interventions are successful when they target those specific skills, those verbs, and then what the verb relates to standard by standard, because that's what we want students to prove to us that they have mastered. And the value of assessments is it helps us figure out which things students can already do, which things they can't yet do. Having said that, I'm going to now turn it over to Susan, who is going to take us really specific examples. So go ahead, Susan.
Okay, let me see. Hold on. Okay, hold on. I have to open up my PowerPoint first. Okay, there we go. All right. Kim, can you see my first page okay?
Yep, we sure can.
Okay, I can't see anybody. So if any hands come up, Kim, can you monitor that for me and just interrupt me?
Yep, so be glad to.
Thank you. So what I'm going to do in the next few minutes is go into assessment specifically at a primary level. And I want to give a disclaimer before I do this. I'm not here to sell iReady, even though we use iReady. I'm going to use iReady as one of the assessment tools that we use to get data about student and to inform our instruction. The second thing is I've taught all grade levels from kindergarten through 12 up until the high school level. I've taught AP Spanish classes. So I know a little bit about each grade level, given the fact that I've taught all grade levels. So in my, hold on one second. Bear with me. I'm used to doing Zoom and not Google Meets. So the purpose of this is of assessment is to assess a student's development of their basic foundational skills in reading and mathematics to identify specific instructional needs for the student placement. In other words, I also use it to inform my instruction, how I can best support my students. Here in Fremont, we use a variety of assessments throughout the year. For those of you who are familiar with kindergarten, first and second grade, we're constantly assessing our children using a variety of assessments. Some of the assessments that we use here in our district are the Benchmark Reading Foundational Skills Screener. This year, we weren't expected to use it, even though we weren't, I still used it to get data on my students. And the Reading Foundational Skills Screeners gives me information about where a child is with respect to reading, whether they're at a kindergarten level, a first grade level, or a second grade level. Another test that we give our children are high frequency words, which are those basic core words that they need to know at each grade level to be successful in reading. And children have to know so many high frequency words at every single trimester. And by the end of the year, they have to have accumulated X amount depending upon the grade level. A third assessment that we use is the oral fluency test, and you'll see the acronym WPM, which means words per minute. And what that is it's a reading selection in our benchmark foundational books. And we have the children do a time test for 1 minute to see how well they read. And then at the end, they give them 3 to 4 reading comprehension questions. And based upon their scores, gives us an idea of how many words per minute those children can read, whether they're below grade level, at grade level, or above grade level. We also give our students the district interim assessments via benchmark, which is our core curriculum. And this year we gave it during first and second trimester. And this year is our first time using iReady, the iReady diagnostic test, and we gave it to our children with the window frame of March 10th to March 31st. I'm going to show you the data from my class. I purposely had someone in assessment and accountability take out my children's names so you would not see who they are, and they're going to be labeled student A, B, C, D to protect their identity and their privacy. So you're going to hear you're going to see some terms on the charts that I have made on what is. And 2 of the key terms that I want you to think about is what is typical growth and what is stretch growth. Typical growth is the average annual growth for a student at this grade level and for initial placement. So in the real world, even though we gave iReady during the 3rd trimester, hopefully we'll use it at the beginning of next year to inform our instruction to see where that child is academically in reading and mathematics. What is stretch growth? That's where you want to see if you can stretch that kid a little bit more and get him or her to achieve a little bit more. So it's an ambitious but attainable level of annual growth that puts students who are below grade level on a path to proficiency. And you will see in my charts that I've devised how that happens. So when there are 2 pages of this data. And what I have done is I have disaggregated the data so that the child who scored the highest will be at the beginning of the chart, and the child who scored the lowest will be at the end of my chart. So if you notice, student D his overall placement is grade 3. There are 6 different areas that they tested the children on in iReady and English language arts. I can't speak English. Phonological awareness, phonics, high frequency words, vocabulary comprehension in the area of literature, and comprehension with respect to informational text. You will see that this child's typical growth, and I'm not an expert on this yet because right before our meeting today, I actually attended an hour-long PD on iReady, and it piqued my attention even more. I have to do more studying about this. But the typical growth for this child is 37. His stretch growth would be 44. And then it shows the day on which I tested my children. It took us about an hour and a half per test. My children did the test all by themselves. One of the things I did prior to administering the test was to prep my parents and send home a lot of informational support for them to set up their child for success. So there was no parent sitting next to the children while they were taking the test. And in all honesty, I believe we got pure data. In fact, I worked collaboratively with my computer teacher, and we both worked together while I administered this test to my children. So you will see as I go down the chart, the data, it changes from child to child. And you will see when I go to the next page, there's more of a change. So let's look at student T right here. This child got max scores in some areas. However, that child in comprehension literature scored at, I'm sorry, in vocabulary, that child got scored at the kindergarten level. You will also see where it says overall performance. You will see the terms early one, which refers to trimester 1 of first grade, mid 1, which means second trimester, and late 1, which means the third trimester of the school year. So if you look at this data, you will notice that the majority of my children are scoring at grade level. However, there are children towards the end of the report, starting with students J, K, M, S, Y, X, Z, and AA. They need support in specific areas. My student who's AA is actually a special needs student, and we have been providing that child with more support. I wasn't able to show it on this report, but when you take the iReady test, and if a child rushes through the test too quickly, a little red flag will appear next to their name. And that tells you that the child's rushed through it really quickly. And so what I did is on another day during office hours, I actually had the child redo the test again. Sometimes the test scores were a little bit better. Sometimes they stayed the same. Once you administer this test, like I shared with you, they place them in 6 different domains in English language arts reading. And if you notice in this chart here, the majority of my students scored in the green zone. Some of them scored in the yellow zone. And where you see the red zone, those children, as well as the red zone and the yellow zone, those children need more intervention and more support. And what I do is I work with them during my office hours, which is at the end of the day, on those specific skills. It's the last 45 minutes of the day to help support those children. And again, these are the 6 areas similar to what was shown on the chart that the children are placed by. I took it a step further and showed how many students are working at grade level, below grade level. And if you look at the data for my children when they took it last month, 25 students or 93% scored on or above grade level. 1 student scored below grade level, and 1 student scored 2 or more grade levels below. And the 1 student actually that's the 2 or more grade levels, that's my special needs child. I also put this little chart on here. It's the same as this rectangular chart at the bottom. It just gives you the data in a pie chart rather than in a little rectangular chart. So once you complete the test, what happens next? Like I shared with you, the test puts the children in different groups based upon their scores. And so I have 5 different reading groups. I meet with those children 20 minutes a day to give them specific support for their whatever areas that they need. And iReady will give you those particular standards that they need help with. My lowest group is the 2 students, and I purposely didn't put their names in them to protect their identity. I work with them every single day for 20 minutes at the end of the day, specifically to help raise their scores and to give them more support. We also, in addition to doing the reading test, we took the math assessment. And in our district, we use various types of assessment to assess our children. I personally use the beginning of the year math inventory, which gives me some baseline data the first few weeks of school to see where my kids are. And it's usually an all-in-all telling thing. I can see yet if kids have basic math skills, if they don't have basic math skills, where their strengths are, and it helps me to inform my instruction. Every trimester, we also give the district math assessment during trimesters 1 and 2. This year, again, we did the iReady diagnostic test in math, and I'm going to share my data with you. And by the way, teachers do not have access to the questions or get to see the questions in advance. Till this day, I don't even know what questions they ask the children. So the data is very pure. You can't teach the test. You have to teach the skills when you're teaching during the regular day to make sure that they learn the material. What I did here is I have my students labeled A, B, C, D all the way through. And I'm going to point out to you where this 439 score is for student J. That particular student rushed through the test. And so I had that student redo the test again. And the student did slightly better. I didn't do an analysis on this chart, but I just wanted to let you know that's why that one was highlighted in red. So most of my kids are scoring third trimester or second trimester in math. Their typical growth, it shows in that one column, and their stretch growth based upon how they did. And coming to the end, I have again, and it goes in order from none of my children, let me go back to this one. None of my children scored grade 2. They all scored at least third trimester in first grade, and some went down to kindergarten. And again, my AA student is my special needs student. And so those children who are in the yellow zone, I work with them extra during my office hours every single day. So what happens now? I want to show you where my children are placed. 25 of my students placed on or above grade level. One student, again, scored a little bit below grade level, and one student scored 2 or more grade levels below. And then I'm also sharing with you the little pie chart, which is the same as this rectangular one, and then this bar graph right here. So by and large, the majority of my children are scoring at or above grade level, or no, they're at grade level rather. No one's scoring at second grade. So this diagram here shows my groupings for mathematics. The majority of my kids are in group 5, and then it goes down to 4. And I only have 1 student in group 1 and 6 in group 2. And that's the end of my presentation. Let me go back. Did anybody have any questions? They're so quiet today.
Susan, can I say just one thing?
Absolutely.
I just wanted the parents to know, I know iReady is new and it seems like it's a wonderful tool, but with Susan going through the data, some parents may not realize that TK and kindergarten is actually using a different program. So students will not see iReady until they enter the first grade.
And thank you for bringing that up. They use ESGI in kindergarten, right, Stacy? And for math, or what do they use? I forgot.
We are using ESGI,
right.
But kindergarten is not doing our third trimester or the third assessment until May.
Yeah. So I'm very happy with the data that I got from my students on iReady, because it validated what I've been doing this year, working like a little beaverette to make sure that my children achieve what they can despite distance learning. But I do, like you saw with my data, I do have students that have little gaps, and that's where I provide support in the form of intervention during my office hours to help better serve them so that they feel successful. And it really and truly has been very helpful for them.
Shilpa has a question.
Go ahead, Shilpa.
Thank you, Susan. That was a lot of information. And I love the data that came through. It was very detailed.
Thank you.
I just had a question. Maybe this is coming because I'm a parent. I don't have anyone in lower elementary, but I'm assuming similar iReady is there in middle school too. So they probably get similar data. So so when my daughter took an iReady test, I get a score and it tells me where she is. But if I as a parent want to know more, like the finer details, like, okay, she understands, I don't know, I think she took it for math. I don't remember if she took it for language arts, but if there's a component in math that she struggles with, how do I as a parent understand that? So if I have to support her at home, how do I do that?
I have a question before I answer your question. Did you already get a report for your child?
No, I didn't get a report, but the teacher sent an email that basically just said that she's going to put some like a number, like words. So if it says like early 7, that means it's in the I guess the first trimester, and mid 7 or third,
Right.
that kind of stuff. But within that, if that she's in the yellow zone or maybe borderline green yellow, how do I as a parent find that information?
And that's an
Goes up on Eliminate or anything?
You know what? And I found out the answer right before we started this meeting. So I'm not, I attended a PD for an hour beforehand. So what I found out is that they will be putting your child's results in the parent portal. They're working on it right now. So parents will be notified of their children's results. Diana Ramirez, I was in that workshop with her today, said that they're working on it right now. I don't know if that's going to be coming in the next few weeks or in May, but you will get results of your child's scores. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, I believe iReady was administered to grades 1 through 8, correct? Yes. So in reading and in mathematics, so you will get notification that you can go to the parent portal and access that information. And it actually gives a lot of detailed information. There is going to be a parent meeting or a parent orientation. I can't remember the date, but I can find it out from Diana and then share it with you. They will notify parents if they want to attend a session to explain the data to them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Just a quick question for Kim for the minutes. Do I need to put a link of this presentation in the minutes?
No, we don't typically link the presentation to the minutes.
Okay, great. All right, thank you.
I think Sue Lemke has some more information about reports. I don't want to put you on the spot there, Sue. No?
Actually, Susan answered exactly what I was going to say, that it's going to be in the parent portal and it's coming soon. So well done, Susan.
Yeah, thank you. I just happened to attend the iReady PD from 3:15 to 4:15. I said, oh, this is going to be good information for our presentation today.
Right.
I personally love data because data drives instruction. And so I'm constantly looking at how my kids are doing, where their weaknesses are, where their strengths are, to best support them, because it informs my instruction as an educator.
Susan, Trustee Zhang, a question?
Oh, yes. I'm going to say jumping. I'm raising my hands for a long time.
I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem. But great presentation. I noticed that from your presentation, you have given the test several times, like when you start the class, at the beginning of the semester, you give them the early test, and then you do the first semester, second semester, and then the third semester. Am I understand correctly?
Are you talking about the iReady test?
No, I'm talking about, because I see that you I was thinking, if the only test you did is the iReady, is that too late?
Oh, no. Let me clarify that. That's a good question. So in the fall, we give the district English language arts and math test. They're two separate tests. Then in second trimester, we give the second trimester test. And then the third trimester, normally we give the district test again in the third trimester, but this year we did the iReady test. So iReady is new, and everybody from grades 1 through 8 administered the iReady test for grades 1 through 8 this third trimester. So we didn't do the district test for math and reading for third trimester.
Right.
Did that answer your question?
Yes. And so then, when the kids going to the next grade, and do you think the teacher would understand where they are? I mean, do you share the information with the next grade teacher?
Yes, that information is stored in a program called Illuminate.
Okay.
And so let's say, for example, you're a student in my classroom, and I can go to your portal and I can access the data to see how you did in iReady, how you did on the district assessments in reading and mathematics.
Okay.
Also, I put that information in the report card comments of their report card too, to help inform the parents also.
Yeah.
But yes, it's in Illuminate. It's in
Okay.
Illuminate. Yes.
Okay,
That's an
awesome.
excellent question.
Thank you.
Great.
You're
And
very welcome.
Trustee Zhang, next year we're anticipating, now that we have iReady, we're anticipating using it multiple times during the year.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of next year, teachers will assess the students that they have that year. So they will not only be able to look back on the data from this year, but they will have fresh data as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thanks.
Yes. And actually, in our grade level meetings on a monthly basis, we educators look at data as part of our grade level meetings to best support our students and to work together collaboratively as a team. So it's always a part of our grade level meetings to look at data.
Oh, awesome.
Yes. At our school site, I'm at Mattis, the Science Technology School. We also have data as part of our monthly ILT, our instructional learning teams. Data is a part of that conversation too. So we're constantly looking at data. It's not something that we look at, in September and then in June. No, it's constant.
That's great. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see Shilpa has a question, and then what I'm hoping to do is be able to put everybody into discussion groups, so you can have a little bit of time to kind of talk as we have in the past. Trustee Zhang, did you want to raise your hand again, or were you just lowering your hand?
Go ahead, Shilpa.
I'm sorry. Once again, maybe a parent perspective, but I was just wondering, I really liked what I saw because it tells me exactly if it's a reading skill or a comprehension skill, because sometimes kids are good readers, but not comprehension or the other way. But I'm just wondering, and I think the elementary schools have transitioned to that detailed rubric, but is this data anywhere? Is there a way, or does this somehow get reflected into their report cards so that the parents have a spot on picture very clearly, or are there two different things and report cards are more class material and this is just for the Illuminate overall picture?
Parents will have access via the parent portal. I personally put it in the report cards just as a paper trail, but also something that I didn't mention in my presentation is, let's say you're a student in my classroom and comprehension is a problem. So what I would do with iReady is assign lessons to the children who need more support and comprehension, and they would work on it during independent time.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm really hoping it's exactly the same happening in middle schools too. Or at least I know there'll be some variations, but the overall framework is kind of similar. So that would really help moving into higher grades, because that's, when they come into ninth, they somehow manage to deficiencies in elementary and middle. But if those deficiencies are not caught by middle, then as soon as they hit high school, they suddenly become very visible to kind of play catch up with them. So
that's true.
Thank you.
I know Jamie would like to say something. Go ahead, Jamie, and then Stacy.
I just wanted to kind of address what Shilpa was asking, because I believe that my understanding from your question, Shilpa, is at the elementary level, we have what's called standards-based report cards. So when report cards go home, parents are able to see exactly which standard and the skills that a child is proficient at, or is working towards proficiency, or is not quite close to proficiency. And you had asked whether this detail will translate into the report cards at the secondary level. Right now, we don't have standards-based report cards at the secondary level. So in order to find out the kind of specifics in terms of exactly what skills or standards your child is needing support with, say like in reading, it's actually understanding author's purpose and inferences or something like that, right? But reading comprehension overall is fine, but it's those specific things. Then I would encourage you, that could be a conversation with the teacher when they do send home just the data from the assessments. If they don't provide the details, you could just reach out to them and just ask for more clarity around which specific standards does your child need support with, or the specific skills. I'm not really sure what the reports will look like in Illuminate when it goes into the parent portal, whether it'll just kind of be the general, early 7th, mid 7th, late 7th, or if it will be by standard. But the iReady data that teachers get, it does give them information as to the standards. So if it isn't reported out that way, you could definitely ask that of the teacher.
Thank you. I really hope it does come in by the standards. And since the district is planning like a parent information night, I would recommend that if they can maybe include a few minutes to explain how parents can access, or that it's okay to request a teacher to go into the details and schedule a meeting, because a lot of times, especially in middle school, I think, because the goal is to be hands off and let the kid lead the learning and let the kid communicate and get that skill going. A lot of times, parents aren't really sure if we can do that or if we cannot do that. And then, so it's if there can be some information on how they can access that, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. And Stacy, you have your hand raised.
Yes. So I just wanted to clarify when Shilpa asked how is these assessments related to report cards, especially in elementary school, we are standards-based, like Jamie and Susan talked about. A lot of times we use these assessments as part of it, but we don't say this is their grade, because we do know in elementary and as any grade level, one test at one time does not reflect the whole child. We don't know if they're sick. We don't know if something happened the night before. So we can't just use one assessment. So I do know a lot of us use it in seeing the overall proficiency in a standard, but we won't just use one test and say, that's it, they don't know it or they do know it, because we do know that all of our students have the good days and we have the bad days. So I just thought I'd bring that up because I'm a kindergarten first grade teacher. So in those grades, the parents understand it a little bit more because I'm trying to get them developed. But as we progress, sometimes the message isn't portrayed. But I do know with my fellow educators, we do that. So I just thought and that's one of the reasons elementary moved to standards-based grading. We don't want it where a student doesn't do well on one test and they can never dig their way out of it, because we want them to show that, yes, they made a mistake. They can learn from the mistake. They can prove it in other ways. They have met the standard and then move forward with that. I hope that helped. I just wanted to give you my primary experience.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions before we move on to our last item on our agenda? Okay, thank you so much for your questions. They're very good. And Shilpa, I will find out the date for you and I'll email you within the next few days. Okay. Our last item on our agenda tonight is suggestions for future agenda items. Kim, are you muted? You're muted. I'm sorry. I could see your lips moving and I thought, oh my goodness.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to remind us that our final meeting, the May meeting, our next meeting is our final meeting of the year. And so there will be a little bit of business work that we need to do, but just taking that into account. And I'll hand it back to you for a focus on upcoming.
Thank you. Any suggestions for future agenda items for our next meeting? You are all so quiet today and subdued. My goodness. Go ahead, Shilpa.
We have hands raised. Yeah, I don't know.
Hands raised.
Okay, go ahead, Shilpa, and then Victoria. I'm sorry.
I think my recommendation would be to continue with this. Like we saw the teacher side of assessments. I would love to see how these translate to the student side, and whether it's through rubrics or middle school and even high school. I think high school is when we really start stressing about assessments and grades. And if there's any way of bringing in something which is beyond just the academic learning, especially for high school. If we want, even if this becomes a topic for next year, that's fine. But something, when we do college applications and all for high schoolers, every college admission officer, every college says we look at it holistically. But honestly, no parent knows what that holistic means. So if there's a way we can change the report card that comes from high schools, which has the standard thing, but it also gives the other elements like the soft skills of the kids. For example, when like Irvington does Quest, there's so much more in Quest that is beyond a grade. So if there's a way of bringing those soft skills into a visual for the child that goes to the colleges, because not every kid will do 200 hours of volunteering and play 50 different sports and everything, but they're still very capable leaders and worthy of admission. So if there's any way the schools or the district can come up with a way of showing that in their transcript, that this kid got a 3.7 GPA, but hey, look at the leadership skills. This is everything that happened. Or somehow incorporate that.
I'm sorry.
Because
So
I think that's a huge gap in high school thing. And that's where one of the struggles is as a parent. Your child has done a lot, but how do you get that across to someone who doesn't know your child at all?
Right. So Shilpa, can I stop you? I hear your suggestion, and I agree with you completely that it's very hard to represent a whole human being with a transcript. I'm not clear about what topic you'd like to have us addressing next month that would be connected to this. And maybe you said it early on and I wasn't listening carefully.
Just assessments from the student perspective. Just a brief, like when students get grades, you talked about intervention and stuff. So like if parents, the student might be getting a B or a B minus, which is okay. It's a good grade. But if the parent still feels that, okay, I think my student needs a little more support on comprehension, how does the parent approach it? Or like, what does the student do? Or how do we look at it from the student's perspective?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I know you've got another suggestion, Susan.
Go ahead, Victoria.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if on the timeline, because some committees and maybe Trustee Prasad could chime in, but we're supposed to be getting some feedback on the extended learning opportunities grant input. So I'm wondering if this committee will be able to provide that input at the next meeting, or if we're going to miss the timeline because the school board will have their second May meeting next month, and that might be when they are approving everything.
I don't know the answer to that question. Kim, do you?
So the question was, can the committee give feedback
on the extended learning opportunities grant? Is that correct, Victoria? That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, so the district will be receiving money through the Extended Learning Opportunities Grant and taking input. And I know that what they're gonna, in a future meeting, do discussion for the school board trustees, and that at another meeting, they are going to approve it. But I wanted to see if we were going to miss that window of providing input kind of entirely on that.
You've got a friend here who's just
Yeah.
floated into your picture.
He senses me unmute myself and finds me wherever he is in the house.
Victoria, I don't know the answer to your question. I'd be glad to explore Letty and figure out exactly how they're going about collecting input. I know no one has come to me and asked that this be a body where we give input, but I can check.
Okay. And then I did want to see, and maybe when you were talking about the business parts, if our annual report creation was going to be part of that for next month.
I would like to have I'd like to have us have a discussion about what it is that we would like to take forward to the board. And maybe I can even ask Trustee Zhang, and I don't know if Trustee Prasad is still with us.
Yes,
or
he is.
not.
He's still here. He's still here.
Maybe I could reach out to you separately and understand what it is that the board is even interested in hearing from the committee, and then that would help us really target and focus what we do. So, Trustee Zhang, I don't want to put you on the spot right now because I know that you might very well not have the answer to that, but that would.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful, because I do actually intend to talk to you, separately. Yes, Kim. So let's.
It's in our bylaws. It does state that we give an annual report to the board. And it doesn't, I don't recall the language, but it doesn't say exactly when. I would assume it would be towards the end of the school year. But it does say that the committee does provide a report to the board.
It is on the agenda that we are looking for ideas from the community. I mean, that's including teachers for how we're going to use the extended fund. And I see that that's an item on the May's agenda. So I would assume you guys are informed about this.
Right. Part of our bylaws, yes, Trustee Zhang, that's exactly why I'm bringing it up, is our bylaws do state that we would come up with recommendations regardless for upcoming action items. So curriculum and instruction obviously is a super fundamental part of what we do in this district. So it would be great to have this committee be able to provide input on things that we think would be beneficial for use of that money. So
absolutely. Yeah, this is one of the important department or committee, right?
Okay.
And then the other piece is I'll volunteer I didn't see anyone in the chat say they wanted to look at that policy with you, Kim, but that's something we could look at in the anti-racism subcommittee. We would only be looking at that policy with that one lens, but at least you'd have other eyes on it, so we could agendize that at our
Okay,
got it. Okay, anything else? Any other suggestions for our next meeting? Okay, it's 5:58. If no one else has any other comments, the meeting's adjourned, and thank you so much. We'll see you May 18th.
Great. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Have a nice day.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Have fun at your meeting, Stacy.
Oh, I have 2 more meetings tonight.
I know.
Kim, I just had one quick question. For the
let's hang on. Okay. I assume once Luis has left, then we are outside the lives.
Okay, cool.